Welcome to 6-1. Today we're going to talk operations on functions. Only one vocab term for today, composition of functions. That's the results of one function is used to evaluate a second function. So to start out with, we are going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing functions. So adding functions, we simply add the like terms together. Subtraction, we subtract the like terms. Multiplication, we use our foiling method. Division, we take the top divided by the bottom. We can simplify as needed. Otherwise, we just have to make sure that our denominator does not equal 0. So first of all, we're going to talk addition and subtraction. So if we're given f of x is equal to x squared minus 4 and g of x is 2x plus 1, we're going to add and subtract them together. So when we add them first, I'm going to take x squared minus 4 and add it to 2x plus 1. Now I'm going to add my like terms, so I can only add x squareds together, which I just have the 1. I can only add x's together, and I just have the 1 as well. But then I've got negative 4 plus 1, which would get me a negative 3. So when I add those two together, I get x squared plus 2x minus 3. When I subtract, it's always first one minus the second one. And again, I can only subtract like terms, so I've got my x squared. Now I have a minusing a 2x, so I'm going to do minus 2x. And then negative 4 minus 1 gets me a negative 5. So when I subtract them, I get x squared minus 2x minus 5. Our next example, we've got f of x is x squared plus 5x minus 2, and g of x is 3x minus 2. We're going to go ahead and add and subtract those together. So x squared plus 5x minus 2 plus 3x minus 2. Again, adding like terms. I've only got the 1x squared term. Now I've got 5x plus 3x. That gets me 8x. Negative 2 plus a negative 2 is the same as negative 2 minus 2, which gets me a negative 4. So x squared plus 8x minus 4. Subtracting, I have x squared plus 5x minus 2, and I'm going to subtract 3x minus 2. Again, like terms, I only have the x squared, so I leave that as it is. 5x minus 3x is 2x. Negative 2 minus a negative 2 is the same thing as negative 2 plus 2, which gets me 0. So my final answer is x squared plus 2x. Go ahead and pause the video and do these ones on your own, and then hit play and see how you did. So for the first one, adding them together, you should have gotten x squared minus x plus 3. For the second one, when we're subtracting, you should have gotten x squared plus x minus 13. Now we're going to look at multiplying and dividing these functions. So if I have f of x is x squared plus 7x plus 12, and g of x is 3x minus 4, when I multiply them together, I need to FOIL. So I'm going to take every term in the first one, multiply it by every term in the second, and then combine my like terms. So x squared times 3x gives me 3x to the third. X squared times a negative 4 is a negative 4x squared. 7x times 3x is 21x. 7x times negative 4 is a negative 28x. 12 times 3x is 36x. 12 times a negative 4 is negative 48. Okay, combining my like terms, I've only got one x cubed term. For x squareds, I've got negative 4x squared plus 21x squared. That gets me 17x squared. Negative 28x plus 36x gives me an 8x. And then I only have the minus 48. So my final answer is 3x cubed plus 17x squared plus 8x minus 48. For dividing, I'm going to do f of x divided by g of x. And again, the only thing I need to make sure of is that I'm not dividing by a 0. So I say that 3x minus 4 can't be 0, and I'm going to solve for x. So add 4 to both sides, divide both sides by 3. So I would say this is my fraction, and I would say that x cannot be 4/3. Our next example, we've got f of x is x squared minus 7x plus 2, and g of x is x plus 4. So when we multiply them together, again, I'm going to be foiling. So x squared times x gives me x cubed. X squared times 4 gives me 4x squared. Negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. Negative 7x times 4 is a negative 28x. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 4 is 8. Now once I've gotten that, I'm going to combine my like terms. I only have 1x cubed. I've got 4x squared minus 7x squared, giving me a negative 3x squared. Negative 28x plus 2x gives me a negative 26x. And I've got my plus 8 at the end. So I get x cubed minus 3x squared minus 26x plus 8. When I do the division, I write it as a fraction, and from there I got to make sure that my denominator is not equal to 0. So I set my denominator not equal to 0, subtract 4 from both sides. I know that my x value cannot be a negative 4. Go ahead and pause the video and do this one on your own, and then hit play and see how you did. So for multiplying them together, you should have gotten a negative x cubed plus 8x squared plus 5x minus 40. And for the division, you should have gotten x squared minus 5 over negative x plus 8, and your x value cannot be equal to 8. The last thing we're going to talk about is composition of functions, and that's where we substitute a function or its value into another function. So we're going to take this function that's inside the parentheses, and we're going to plug it in to the one that's outside of the parentheses. So start inside and work your way out. Okay, this is the main way that you're going to see it written, this f of g of x. The other way you can see it is written like this with the little open circle. So when we have f of x is 2x minus 5 and g of x is 4x, we're going to find the following. If it's f of g of x, I take g of x and I plug it in for f. So instead of 2x minus 5, I'm going to take this 4x and I'm going to plug it in for x. So I'm going to do 2 times 4x minus 5. And 2 times 4x gives me 8x. So my final answer is 8x minus 5. For g of f of x, I take f of x and I plug it into g. So now I'm going to take this 2x minus 5 and I'm going to plug it in for x over here. So instead of 4 times x, I'm going to do 4 times 2x minus 5. And that's going to get me 8x minus 20. Another example here, we've got f of x is x squared plus 2, g of x is x minus 6. If we're finding f of g of x, again, I take g of x and I plug it into f of x. So I'm going to take this x minus 6, and I'm going to plug it in for x. So instead of x squared, I'm going to have x minus 6 squared plus 2. Remember, x minus 6 squared is the same as x minus 6 times x minus 6. I need to FOIL this, so I've got x squared minus 6x minus 6x plus 36, and then I bring down that plus 2. Combining my like terms, I don't have anything to add to my x squared. Negative 6x minus 6x is negative 12x. 36 plus 2 gives me 38. So my final answer is x squared minus 12x plus 38. G of f of x, I take f of x and I plug it in for g. So I'm going to take x squared plus 2 and substitute it in for x in g of x. So instead of x minus 6, I'm going to have x squared plus 2 minus 6. Okay, I'm not multiplying anything in the parentheses, so I can write it without it, and then combine my like terms. 2 minus 6 gives me a negative 4. So my final answer is x squared minus 4. Go ahead and pause the video and do this last one on your own, and then hit play and see how you did. For f of g of x, you plug negative x plus 8 into x for f of x. Remember, you have to FOIL the negative x plus 8, and you get a final answer of x squared minus 16x plus 59. For g of f of x, we plug x squared minus 5 in for x in g of x, so I've got negative, and then x squared minus 5 plus 8. Distribute the negative, combine your like terms. You should get a final answer of negative x squared plus 13.